shooting last night. A lot of them ended up being open, and that's a credit to not just CMB making the right passes and stuff to start the whole trend, but you see other guys out there making that extra pass to create a better look, and that's what you saw last night.
And you're starting to see this team gel the right way. It feels like these past couple of games. And look, we knew when you had new faces coming in and kind of changing what you're doing on offense in a lot of ways, it was going to be some growing pains. We've certainly seen that through the first couple of games, but Jamari Thomas seems to be well immersed in his role at that guard spot. You're obviously seeing Nick Pringle step up his scoring. Colin Murray-Boyle is playing great as he does each and every game. Miles Studi getting over the hump of that 2 games where he didn't have any points. So it really seems like your starting 5 in particular is just really gelling the best it has so far this season.
I think a lot of people were, I haven't seen a ton of it, but I feel like deep down a lot of people were probably wanting to see some change in the starting lineup with Miles Studi not having any points before last night in his last 2 games and stuff. And he hadn't been shooting well this year. Let's be honest. He was shooting less than 30% from the field through 10 games. And Nick Pringle hadn't been looking great at times, but obviously he's come along better as of late. So I think a lot of people wanted to see some changes probably, but it's good that you were able to see the same starting 5 out there last night and guys come through and play well. And I mean, that's what we saw. It wasn't the best night for Jamari Thomas shooting, but he also had some critical rebounds and other big plays that really helped South Carolina make the difference. And everyone made an impact last night.
Let's hear a little bit from Lamont Paris on just what this win means to South Carolina as they get set for conference play coming up here in just a couple weeks. Cut number 18 here, Ed.
Very important win. They not only to the eyeball test, and the fact that they have it. We told, hey, you know what I told you about that home and home again? I'm throwing that out the door next year. Love you too, man. All right. But yeah, to get a quality win like that against, and we scheduled intentionally this way. If you look at our losses, sans the North Florida game, first game of the year, and they had a good team and they were ready. Our losses are on the road at a top 25 ranked team at the time at Indiana, away from home against a top 25 team in Xavier. And then you follow that up with a couple more high major games, ACC games, and then you come with another team that you know is going to be good. Not that we scheduled this, we play it every year. But I think it's really important for, as we start to build resume and start to get into the teeth of our conference, and if we can finish it out good, then everything's out there for us. It'll be, how many of those can you win? Because I think it was out of 18 games, conference games, 15 were quad 1 wins. That's bananas.
And I think about, how this season's been so far. And yeah, you had the loss to North Florida, you had the loss to Indiana, had the loss to Xavier, and the Xavier and Indiana loss. Those are good quality teams that, Carolina just wasn't able to get the better of. From a confidence standpoint of not only the fan base, but I feel like this team as well, you needed to see them prove themselves against a quality opponent, which is what they did last night. Again, quad 1 win, which is something they didn't have quad 1 or 2 win going into last night's game. And they're the only SEC team up to that point that hadn't done that. Obviously get that win on the books, which kind of cancels out the North Florida loss, I guess, to a degree, when it comes to Selection Sunday, when those debates are happening. Carolina's fortunate enough to be in those positions, but with how challenging we know the SEC is going to be this year, always tough, but maybe the toughest it's ever been this upcoming season, with just how great all these teams have started the year. You wanted to see them be able to beat a team like Clemson, and they were able to do that last night, which gives you confidence for the Murderers Row that's coming up here starting in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's here's the crazy thing, that South Carolina has moved up 15 spots in the net rankings, which is a great metric to look at how teams stack up against each other. The rest of the SEC is still ahead of South Carolina within the top 60, which is crazy. So the SEC is going to be a gauntlet this year, no doubt. But I think you're right. This last night was a real good test for Carolina. It was their last true opportunity to prove what they can do, because these next 2 games against Bradford and Presbyterian, you might not learn a ton about this team because they're inferior opponents that you should beat by 20 or 30. But last night was your last real test to have against a quality opponent like a Clemson team, and you were able to get the win. And yes, you only have one quad 1 win through 11 games now and through non-con play. But look, you'll have plenty of opportunities in SEC. And I think if you go about 500 in league play, I think you're looking at being a tournament team, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think when you look back to, I know what you and Chris were talking about at the top of the show, it seemed like the sky was falling after that first loss to North Florida, which North Florida is better team than I think a lot of people give them credit for. It's just that name kind of brings negative connotations when you end up losing to them. But as Coach Bears has alluded to, I think that loss did a lot of good for this team because it allowed them to say, hey, guess what? You're not hot bleep. You got to take a look at this and you got to take this seriously, or these kind of teams are going to beat you. And again, you have lost to the Indianas and the Xaviers, 2 quality teams, but you've handled your business against everybody else. And again, you get 2 more tune-ups against Radford and Presbyterian over the next couple days before you get set for a conference play, because there's no days off in the SEC. And even a team like a Vanderbilt or a Missouri, like even they're having a really good season so far. Carolina at 8-3 has the worst record in the SEC as of right now. Everybody else has 2 or fewer losses. So again, there's no letting up. You're going to have to face tough competition each and every game over the course of the next 2.5 months.
Yeah, and look, if that's the worst record in the SEC, I think you take it, because you're more likely than not of finishing non-conference play at 10-3. And if you had told someone that at the start of the year, look, this team last year was so good, they only had lost 1 game going into SEC play, you knew there was probably gonna be a little bit of regression, not as good as last year. And to only have 3 losses right now, I think you feel pretty good about where you are. And then you let the chips fall where they may, and you just try to run the table in conference play, which obviously this league is so good. And I think South Carolina is going to have a real good chance to make some noise here.
Absolutely. Again, we're broadcasting live at Firehouse Subs in Cayce, 542 Knox Abbott Drive, right across the street from Brooklyn and Cayce High School. Going to be going up until noon here on the Extra Point and the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour on your Wednesday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point and Gamecock Central takeover of Firehouse Subs in Cayce. 542 Knox Abbott Drive. Tyler, Wes, and Chris and Jack hanging out here. Going up until noon. Store opens up in a couple minutes. Come by and see us. Get a delicious sub. I believe we had some tickets to give away as well today. Is that true, Josh? Yes, we got some tickets to give away as well. So come by and see us as we're going up until noon. Remind you as well, the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest rolls on for the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl coming up in 2 weeks as Carolina takes on the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Same rules as always. If Gamecocks score a special teams touchdown and you have registered to win, you could win $1,200 in the Lord Lisa. $1,300. We've upped it. We've added another $100 now that we have the 13th game. We've got good confirmation on that. So again, go online to 1075game.com if you've not already and register for the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest. So Jack, I know you weren't here yesterday. You and I both weren't here on Monday, so we haven't gotten to talk a lot about the college football calendar, but this is something that has been apparently grinding your gears, as it has for many of us as of late. James Franklin on Monday, had his quote about, hey, this model is broken essentially because, of course, Bo Pribula went to the transfer portal. Now he's not going to be available for the playoff games for Penn State, no matter how far they end up going in it, because he needed to find a new home. To land as a starting quarterback somewhere else. And, I feel like we talk about this schedule thing in circles all the time because we're all aware that it's broken, but nobody's really trying to fix it, it seems like.
And there's just the reason it grinds my gears is just because there seems to be no, well, like you said, no one's really taking that initiative of pointing it out, the problems with it, because there are so many flaws with the system. It's good in so many ways that guys have an opportunity. If they don't like their current situation, they're not playing a ton, they have an opportunity to go find a home elsewhere. The problem is when you have this playoff format like you do now, it's not like the old system where it's 4 teams and you have most of December off before playing on New Year's Eve or whatever. Now it's like you play December 20th and 21st, and that's right in the middle of the prime portal window, and guys have to pick and choose when they want to leave. And the problem is you can't wait until the end because guess what? School starts in January and you have to be enrolled in classes. So that's part of the reason why the portal is really an issue right now.
Well, and the portal is a big catalyst of that, but where you have signing day, obviously what you have with NIL just creates this giant mess. And I kind of liken it to, let's think about the NFL for a second, where the NFL's calendar is great. And everything is spaced out the way that it needs to, where one thing kind of happens at a time. Let's just imagine instead, as we get set for the NFL regular season to come to a close, playoffs happening through January and February leading up to Super Bowl. Well, let's just say at the same time, you had your draft, like wild card, 2 days before wild card weekend. And then the week after that, free agency opens to where you're having guys moving around and making deals and all these kind of stuff in the middle of the most important football happening the entire year, the playoffs happening. Any sane person listens to that and thinks that makes absolutely no sense, because it doesn't. But that's what college football is dealing with. And I know it's been kind of a slow process integrating it into what college football has now become, in addition to the bowls and the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know when it gets fixed, because, again, there's no authority figure. We don't have a Roger Goodell. We don't have Adam Silver. We don't have a Rob Manfred to say, hey, what are you going to do about this? We can get a formal statement from the NCAA for whatever that's worth. But, we've been dealing with these problems for so many years now. I don't have the highest confidence they're suddenly going to be fixed overnight, unfortunately.
I just don't know what the solution is. Like, I've had so many talks about this with my family and stuff, being with them the last few days. And, I've heard some of them say, like, hey, just move the transfer portal back to after the new year and stuff. Well, that's not necessarily ideal because, like I said before, you have school starting up and you have to be enrolled in class. People still forget these are still student athletes, whether you want to believe it or not. And yes, they still have to go to school. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
But I also think like the other solution maybe is maybe just move the football schedule up a little bit. Then that maybe I just don't know what the solution is. And that's the problem, is that we have no one at the top. Like you said, we don't have a commissioner of college football to kind of help navigate all these issues, because look, there are major problems right now and they aren't going away anytime soon. You need someone in there. I don't know who it's going to be, but you need someone in there to kind of help figure this whole thing out, because the problems are only going to get worse as long as things stand where they are.
Yeah, and look, we know that, or we assume that the revenue sharing stuff will alleviate some of the complications that have come on with NIL, but the schedule thing is still an issue. And again, I don't know who necessarily is going to be able to fix it at this point in time, but it's something that is a problem that everybody certainly recognizes to be a problem. So we'll see what happens. But the student athlete element of it is so funny to think about, because that's the last thing that we really concern ourselves with when it comes to college football and stuff. These are technically still student athletes at this point in time. And, I think about the, playoff extending into January now, with the national championship being on like January 20th. Players that, go all that way, whether it be on Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, whatever, they have a 5-day window after that game to jump in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
How that's going to work, trying to transfer on January 25th, I have no idea, because like you said, you have the academic side of it. And, drop ad is 5 days after classes start on normal campuses Chris looked this up yesterday for South Carolina. Drop ads like on the 20th or whatever. So there are guys theoretically that have not finished playing their season that are behind the 8 ball when it comes to transferring for a lot of these schools in terms of the academic calendar, if they decide to go in after the national championship game.
And I feel like it's really the only thing that's holding this whole thing back from moving the portal back to like after the season ends. Because if there were no school, wouldn't be an issue. I almost wonder if you go down the route eventually of having like a separate entity of the school from the normal like student livelihood type of thing, where maybe it's like, kids that are, actors or whatever, they go to school separate from all the public school kids. Do you do something like that? I just don't know what the solution is, man.
You're opening up a whole nother can of worms at that point in time. I don't even want to begin to think what that could mean.
I don't even know, but it's just like you got to do something about it. I feel like the whole enrollment thing is what's really keeping the portal from being able to be after the season. Because right now where it is, it's fine in some senses, but when you have the playoff where it is, you have situations like this with Penn State and other schools around the country.
Yeah, certainly a mess. And again, we'll see if the powers that be can get some kind of wrangle on it. Last minute here, again, before you head out, going to hear from Mike Shula later on today, press conference, introducing him as officially as the offensive coordinator. What's the one thing maybe you're most intrigued to hear from him a little bit later on today?
I don't think I've ever gotten to ask him a question before. I do want to ask, obviously there's always the comparisons with coaching Josh Allen and Cam Newton. I've read some things out there that he doesn't really like to compare those guys because they're so different in so many ways. I'd like to hear from him straight up. What are the biggest differences between a guy like Sellers and Josh Allen and Cam Newton amongst others? Because when you see these guys stacked up against each other, they are similar in a lot of ways. So that would be interesting to hear what he has to say on that matter today.
And we'll have that for you on the halftime show coming up a little bit later. We're broadcasting live at Firehouse Subs, 542 Knox Abbott Drive, going until noon here on The Game. Tyler Ed here once again telling you about our friends over at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. There is never a bad time to hang out at Twin Peaks, but especially not a bad time during the holiday season. Coming up this Friday, December the 20th, it is National Ugly Christmas Sweater Day, and there's only one thing better than an ugly Christmas sweater, and that is scoring free chips and queso for wearing one. That's right. Get to Twin Peaks wearing your ugly Christmas sweater all day long on Friday and get yourself free chips and queso, and you can hang out and enjoy ugly Christmas sweater day all day long. I tell you about it all the time. TVs as far as the eye can see, delicious food, and of course those 29-degree draft beers. Never a bad time down with our friends at Twin Peaks in the Vista, especially as the playoffs come up with college football, with professional football. Basketball's in full swing. Hockey's going on. So much stuff going on. So many great things happening with our friends over at Twin Peaks. You don't leave it in there. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point and Gamecock Central takeover of Firehouse Subs here in Cayce. 542 Knox Abbott Drive. Tyler, West, and Chris hanging out, going to noon. Store literally just opened. Come by and see us. Enjoy delicious Firehouse Subs. They have the new French dip, which we're talking about our experience with French dips. I'm very excited to try this coming up here in a little bit because it looks, as everything does here, very delicious.
We had a healthy debate about whether or not there's onions traditionally on one or in au jus, but what I can tell you is this. The one at Firehouse Subs does have caramelized onions.
Well, here's the thing. If you don't like them, you don't have to get them on there. You can ask for them without onions.
Customize everything. Wes will probably find a way to put bacon on the French dip.
And probably a fried egg, too.
Probably good.
Well, I don't have to find a way. I'll just say, hey, guys, can you add some bacon? And they'll do it. And then we're going to put some hot sauce on that thing. And then we are going to be rolling. But it was not a healthy debate. It was an all-out fight about traditionally.
What was our consensus? What did we come to here? What's the rule?
The consensus is that traditionally, no, but some places, yes.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not a concrete answer, though.
No, that's a 100% concrete answer. That traditionally, no, but like any sandwich, you can put your own twist
It's
at
kind of like a Reuben sandwich. Like normally it has Thousand Island, but you can trade out deli mustard.
Okay.
We could go down this rabbit hole, but nonetheless, come out.
We're about to try the thing.
We are going to try the thing, which
Cool.
I'm have a lot of confidence. It's going to be very delicious, and we'll give our full review of it here coming up in a little bit. We'll talk plenty of basketball as the morning goes along. Spent pretty much the entire first hour on it, but we got some coaching contracts being restructured yesterday and official hires. I mentioned this to Preston a little bit earlier this morning. You know, watching like ESPN yesterday and seeing on the bottom ticker, South Carolina hires Mike Shula as offensive coordinator. I'm like, well, yeah, that was like 2 weeks ago for us here in the bubble. But I guess for the McMurphys of the world, Brett Murphy and guys like that, you got to wait for the contract to be official. So now officially we can say Mike Shula is the offensive coordinator here at South Carolina.
ESPN did give Gamecock Central a little love with the ticker a couple weeks ago. Was saying it was reported, but yeah, sometimes people don't want to.
Well, it's all. I mean, this is the process, right? There's a process for everything.
Sure.
You have the initial. You have to use the verbiage expected to be and all those things to protect yourself. But yeah, this has been the case. Now it's official, board approval, all those things. It's locked in. Literally as of yesterday, looking at the contract, it's December 17th was when his time as the OC started. So, but I thought, guys, just as interesting was everything else we got from this. And that is, I think we all knew Clayton White was going to be in line for a raise, for an extension. That was certainly the case. I think we were all kind of wondering, will South Carolina have to fight off some other schools for Clayton? And I think Clayton White, it seems, is very happy at South Carolina, but teams were going to start to take notice of what he did, whether that's, other defensive coordinator openings, whether that's some head coach openings. And, it seems like South Carolina was pretty proactive this year in going ahead and getting basically all these contracts knocked out, whether it was Clayton's, who was, I would say the biggest jump, obviously, with a raise and extension, or, just giving all the other assistants extensions as well, some with raises. And then another thing that kind of just went under the radar a little bit was passing game coordinator title for Mike Fury.
Yeah, I thought, first of all, Clayton White, to go back to him, unless I'm mistaken, guys, and I don't think I am, the first $2 million coordinator in South Carolina history when his second year kicks in of this contract in 2026. 3-year deal, I think, Wes, right?
Yep.
3-year deal for Clayton White, 1.9 in 2025, year 2, 2026. So he'll get $2 million and then another $100,000 on top of that in year 3 of the deal. So, I mean, Wes said it yesterday on social media, well deserved with the year that he had. And I can't remember a time where South Carolina has literally done new contracts for every single one of the coaches. I could be, there could be a gap in my memory there, but typically what you see is hey, these couple guys are going to get raises, or they're going to get a title, or these couple guys are going to get extensions, or hey, they had a couple coaches. I think it was Travian Robertson, Lonnie Teasley, whose deals expired December 23rd or December 31st of this year. So you knew that you were going to take care of their contracts and give them an extension as well. But to have everybody at once, kind of unique, because you're hiring an OC officially, you're extending your defensive coordinator, and then you're taking care of all your other coaches with some other extensions, raises, and, as you said, Wes, titles in there as well.
And maybe I'm wrong on this, Chris. Things tend to run together, but does this not feel like in the past it's more been like if you ask around about stuff like this, it's kind of like, all right, yeah, some guys are going to get some raises, some guys are going to get some extensions. We'll get to that. This just feels as quick and proactive as we've ever seen South Carolina in terms of making these moves. And, with everything else going on right now, to go ahead and just knock this out, I think is smart. And, continuity has always been important, I think, to Shane Beamer. And we saw him really stand by Clayton White with the way things went last year, and it has paid off immensely. And so now I think when you're coming off 9-3, potentially getting to 10 wins, if you can win the bowl game, they really wanted to just dive into, all right, now this doesn't mean you can't lose a coach, right?
Sure.
But be proactive, go ahead and get these contracts to where if another school reaches out to one of these guys, I don't know, human nature, I got to feel like it's a little bit harder for me to entertain conversations, especially when you're talking about maybe like a lateral type move. A little bit harder for me to entertain a conversation with a different company if the person who's paying my bills has been proactive and being like, we're going to take care of you. So I think this is a smart move.
And you guys probably know this better than anyone. Do you know what Clayton White's aspirations as a coach are? Is he wanting to, most do want to get to the point of being a head coach at a Power 5 level, go Group of 5 at some point? Is it whatever opportunity presents itself? Like, I know we don't hear from him a lot on these kind of things, but any idea of what his aspirations will be down the line if the opportunities presented themselves?
And I don't want to try to speak for Clayton White, so that's not what I'm doing. But I think he's about like any coach in that I'm sure one day he wants to run his own program. I also have never gotten the impression that he is the guy who is just trying to climb the ladder, against all other factors. Like, we've seen coaches that just, you go back, you look at their resume, and it's like, oh, well, yeah, they're moving up, but it's like 2 years here, 1 year there, 2 years at this other place, and they're just climbing the ladder. I think he's a relationships guy, genuine guy. I think he's happy at South Carolina just from what I see. But, I think every coach probably wants to try their hand at being a head coach. But, people I talk to say, yeah, that guy's going to be a head coach one day. But doesn't seem to be the person who's just using every job as a stepping stool to the next step. I think he's someone who is where his feet are, so to speak.
Yeah, not going to take a job just for the sake of taking it. You see some guys, they're bound and determined, like you said, Wes, I'm going to become a head coach. Well, you also look at an SEC defensive coordinator job is pretty good. SEC position coach job is pretty good. Like Clayton White is going to make $1.9 million, $2 million, $2.1 million. He's been here a while. His family's here. Seems happy. Got that continuity. There's something to be said for being at a place for a while as opposed to jumping. We've seen coaches jump to head coaching positions where you kind of know right off the bat, man, looks like that's going to be kind of a challenge, right? And some of them want to do that. Others are a little bit more choosy, and I get the sense just from kind of watching how Clayton White's operated that he's good staying at South Carolina, being the DC, having the relationships with his players. Shane Beamer, who's believed in him, brought him here, has stuck by him, and making $2 million a year. That's not that bad.
No.
I mean, you're going to go to you're going to take some head coaching jobs. If you step down to the G5 level, you might not even make that. Right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a good majority of G5 coaches that are honestly under $1 million.
Yeah, you went through it yesterday.
Especially if you're coming in as a guy that had never been a head coach anywhere before.
Yeah, and sometimes that's your first step is being a G5 coach, right?
Yeah.
So if you got an SEC defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, or like I said, even position coach job, they're certainly worse places to be.
Yeah, and again, raises for a lot of the assistants here, and well deserved raise for all those guys. But when you look at Sterling Lucas and what this defensive front did, particularly when it comes to Cal Kennard and Dylan Stewart, you knew if there was going to be one assistant that was going to get a raise, he was probably going to be that guy, and gets a nice bump in pay there, and gets the contract extension as he can continue to go out on the trail and boast the accomplishments of what those guys are able to do, and have those recruits know that he's going to be here for the next couple of years as well.
Yeah, Sterling Luke, I mean, he was deemed to be a rising star, I think, when he arrived at South Carolina. But do you ever truly know? Obviously not. And he's sort of backed up that thought completely, both in terms of development on the field with his guys, but also certainly the results speak for themselves on the recruiting trail as well. Landing players either via the portal or via high school recruiting, getting in those kind of big boy recruiting battles and fighting it out. And yeah, he's a rising star. I mean, you talk about somebody else, we talked about Clayton White one day being a head coach. Sterling's a younger guy, but I mean, he's going to be a defensive coordinator one day. He's going to be a head coach one day if he wants to be. So, you got to take care of these guys while they're here. I mean, there's not really a whole heck of a lot more to add about Sterling, and just that the results speak for themselves for the job he's done with his room. And I think the first thing you should always look at, if you just want a big picture take, does a position coach take care of their room? Above all else, like, do they handle their room? That's development, that's recruiting, that's frankly, keeping guys around that you want to stay in the program. All those things can be boiled down to, do they take care of your room? And Sterling Lucas absolutely does.
I want to pose a question about these contract extensions from the standpoint of, as we kind of get into the future of this new era of college football, because I feel like a lot of people can look at what happened yesterday as a very positive sign in a lot of ways. With that coming up next, it is the Extra Point and Gamecock Central takeover of Firehouse Subs, 542 Knox Abbott Drive here in Cayce, across the street from Brooklyn Cayce High School. Store is open. Come by and see us. Got tickets to give away. You can come get a delicious sandwich. Try the new French dip while you're hanging out with us here as we are going until noon on your Wednesday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point Gamecock Central takeover of Firehouse Subs here in Cayce, right across the street from Brooklyn Cayce High School. Stores open. Come by and see us. Again, got tickets to give away. Got some delicious Firehouse Subs here. Always a good time out at Firehouse Subs. Appreciate our Larry Chandler for letting us be out here once again tonight, by the way. 6 o'clock here on the game. Get a special Citrus Bowl edition of Carolina Calls with Coach Beamer, talking all things Illinois. I'm sure plenty of things about the contract extension of his assistants as well. Again, that's coming up tonight at 6 o'clock. And I wanted to kind of pose this question because, optics are a good conversation point, especially around college football. And when you look at things that have happened recently at a place like Florida State, where you and I talked about this the other day, Mike Norvell, basically giving back half of his contract because they had a bad year and trying to help out with, their funds for the upcoming revenue sharing, what Mike Gundy's done at Oklahoma State, LSU with Brian Kelly pledging $100 million going back into that fund. For Carolina to be extending and giving raises to all these assistants, probably makes you feel pretty good about where Carolina stands in terms of getting prepared for revenue sharing, that they're not seemingly pinching some of the pennies that the other programs around the country have been doing these past couple of weeks.
Yeah, there was a time not that long ago. You'll remember this, Wes, as a long time follower / coverer of the program, where assistants that you wanted to keep would take other jobs, and you would kind of dig into, well, why? And it was, oh, well, they're not going to give him a multi-year deal, or, oh, he's going here to get more money. It wasn't, oh, he doesn't like the South Carolina job. It's not, it's literally, contract issues or money. And that frustrated the fans, rightfully so, right? Because if you've got coaches that are doing a good job that everybody involved wants to keep them, right? And so now you can go the other way. You can, if a team is not performing on the other side, people are going to look at it. Why are you paying these coaches so much, right? But Wes, you mentioned it earlier. Shane Beamer's a fan of continuity. He's not going to make change just to shake things up for the heck of it, even if the public really wants him to. If it's working, he wants continuity. And I think South Carolina's found success when they've been able to have continuity on their coaching staff. So if your guys are doing a good job and you want to keep it going, do what it takes. Invest in the program. And nobody can look at what they've been doing lately from a contract and a salary standpoint and say they're cheaping. That still comes up every now and then. Like when they're looking for a new OC, they're going to cheap out. There's no evidence of that. They're paying a defensive coordinator $2 million a year starting next year.
Yep.
You don't have to pay Mike Shula $3 million a year, right?
Right.
And that's the guy Beamer wanted. If he wanted somebody that was going to take $2.5 million, I think he could have gotten it, right? So these are the decisions that he's made. Things have kind of flipped. That's been one of the biggest changes we've seen from an athletics department standpoint in the last, 10, 15 years. They have really invested in the coaching and the contract side of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it does take some time when people think that's how you operate. It takes some time for people to kind of acknowledge that, all right, like this is not your grandfather's South Carolina. Like they have been willing to spend. And, you had that long interview with Eric Hyman. He took a lot of heat for penny pinching back then. And he kind of had to. I think he certainly felt like he had to. And, I still look back on some of the decisions, some of the tough decisions he made back then where you maybe tick off your fan base, but it's long-term something that has to be done. And so I think Carolina is maybe benefiting from some of those decisions now that were probably frowned upon back then in terms of having the resources to spend what they need to spend to keep some of these coaches around. And, it doesn't guarantee you're going to keep everybody. Dow Loggins took a head job, but what you really want is you don't want to be overpaying coaches that you are kind of okay if they leave or that you have to get rid of, but you also do not want to lose coaches to lateral positions. And that is something that I think South Carolina, to Chris's point, used to have to worry about. Could there be a situation where it happens again? Of course, everybody's different, but for the most part, they've taken the steps to try to avoid that.
And I think that's an important point that you brought up there because, we talk about continuity when it comes to recruiting and having these promises, hey, I'm going to be here in a couple of years, whether it be as then, a coordinator, an assistant or whatever. And I think every, recruit understands, a coach could, as a defensive assistant, could get a job as a coordinator somewhere else, something like that, an essential move up the ladder. But avoiding those lateral moves, like you said, I think is really important. And when you have a athletics department that's willing to pay coaches what they deem their value to be and get these raises and stuff like that, you have the belief that, as long as they're happy with the job they have, they're going to stay here. Now, again, if you're, Sterling Lucas and you get a defensive coordinator job somewhere, that's a little bit of a different story. But as long as he's getting paid what he deserves to be paid as a, defensive edge coach, then he's going to be here. And when it comes to recruiting stuff like that, that's very easy to sell that, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for the long run.
You look at, Mike Fury, right? Mike Fury has been a small school head coach in this state at Limestone. He's been an NFL position coach. And from what I heard, I think you heard some of the same stuff this offseason, Wes. Like Mike Fury could have had some opportunities to go do some other things, whether it was, small school head coach, offensive coordinator somewhere, right? Like Mike Fury could probably make a bunch of calls, and if he wanted to go back to the NFL, he could probably do that, right? So, for Shane Beamer, that worked out quite well. We were talking about earlier about how, generally if you make it to where you've taken care of a guy, they're not going to look around as much. Well, there was an exception. It was James Coley. That was a little bit of a different situation. So, Shane Beamer shook some things up. Part of his plan in the offseason was let's shift some things around at receiver. Let me go bring in a receivers coach, and he had Coley fully in mind to do that. Well, that plan got messed up when Coley left to go back to Georgia. Well, what do you do from there? Well, you got to pick yourself up off the ground and go make another good hire. And all indications are, man, Mike Fury was a really good hire. I mean, you look at what he's done in recruiting. He's got a really good receiver class that could grow with the 2025 class. They're off to a good start in 2026. They're going to have an opportunity in the transfer portal. You look at the development of some of the guys from the start of the season to the end. Like, the returns have been good. And so that's not to say Mike Fury won't ultimately say, hey, I want to go coach in the NFL again, or I want to go be a head coach again. Maybe that does happen, but you kind of make that decision a little tougher to where he's not, well, I can go be a small school head coach and make more money, right? You're making that decision tougher because you're keeping your core guys, you're enticing them, right? By, having a great program to work for. Shane Beamer is a good person to work for from all accounts, from what we've heard. He's not overbearing, and then you're compensating these guys very well too.
Preston and I talked about this morning. When all these coaches go out together, who's picking up the bill now that they've all gotten nice little extensions and raises?
I don't know.
Like credit card roulette, just put it all in a pot.
Yeah,
and see who they pull out.
That's probably the safe way to
just rotate it.
Yeah.
The roulette's fun, but guys, it really hit me. I knew this was a good receiver class, but just seeing all 5 of those guys all on campus already, that picture that Fury posted on Twitter with Gidron, Malik, Brian Rowe, Jaden Sellers, Lex Cyrus, all right there in a row. You're just like, man, there's some talent in that picture. Potentially, looks good for them to add Donovan Murph as well. That's a complete reshape of the future of that position, I think. And to get all those guys to buy in at the same time, I think is a pretty special situation for the future of that receiving core.
Talk plenty more about this as the show goes along. Also get back into more men's basketball a little bit later on. But coming up next, going to check out the guy, Chris Wellbaum. It's been a couple weeks. Get his insight on what's going on with the women's basketball program as they get set to start conference play coming up here in a couple of weeks as well. Again, we're broadcasting live at Firehouse Subs in Cayce, right across the street from Brooklyn Cayce High School. Stores open. Come by and see us, Tyler West and Chris, going until noon on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point and Gamecock Central takeover of Firehouse Subs. 542 Knox Abbott Drive here in Cayce. We're right across the street from Brooklyn Cayce High School. Tide West Chris hanging out. Our guy Larry just walked in. We have tried the French dip sub, which is brand new here at Firehouse Subs. Chris is finishing up his version, his piece of it. What's your assessment?
Man, phenomenal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
I've always been a big fan of the French dip.
Yeah, it's a quality sandwich, hard to beat.
Yeah, this is a good version of it.
And you're good with the onions on it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Caramelized onions.
Caramelized
That's an
onions.
important distinction.
Good little sweetness there in
Yeah.
addition to the meat and obviously the cheese and everything, in addition to the great au jus that you get to dip it in. So
That's right.
come out, Firehouse Subs, give it a try again, hanging out here until noon on your Wednesday on the game. Time to talk a little bit of women's basketball. It's been a couple weeks, I believe, since we checked in with our guy, Chris Wellbaum. And Chris, I don't even think we had talked to you since the loss to UCLA the other weekend. But since then, this team has clicked back in gear. First of all, appreciate you taking your time this morning, as always. This team seems to have clicked into gear these past couple of weeks. What's really stood out to you in this 5-game winning streak since the loss a couple weeks ago?
Just the focus and the intensity on defense. They had some lapses against South Florida, but South Florida is a very good team. So I think you have to credit the Bulls for causing some of that. But in the 4 games between UCLA and South Florida, they were just completely locked in defensively, making everything difficult for the other team, creating lots of easy baskets, lots of transition buckets. They're a very athletic team. Not many people can keep up with them in transition, but before you can get in transition, you have to play defense. And up to and including the UCLA game, they weren't always focused on defense to create those opportunities. And they sort of got the message after that loss that this is what you need to do to win.
Welly, I saw somebody on social media, probably more than one person, honestly, say that, hey, the Ashlyn Watkins dunk from the game recently was her best. So 2-parter for you. Number one, do you agree? What's your ranking? You've seen and covered all the Ashlyn Watkins dunks. And then secondly, just bigger picture, I mean, how important has she been since she's gotten back into the groove, integrated back into this team? Because that was something that down low, in the post, they seem to be missing Camila Cardoso. They still do, obviously, with what she brought to the table. Just how important has she been as she's gotten back into the lineup?
Well, the first part, ranking the dunk, it's definitely her best. It was coming off the steal over a 6'7" shot blocker, the nation's leading shot blocker at that. It's so easy to just the slightest contact can disrupt it, and she finished over Prince. It was a hard dunk too. It wasn't a soft one, so it was one of the most impressive dunks by a woman other than Brittany Griner that I've ever seen. And as far as what she means for the team, and part of it's what that dunk means is she's getting back to the player we expected her to be this season. I looked up the stats this morning, actually. South Carolina's averaging over 2 fewer blocks per game than last year and over 3 fewer blocks per game than 2 years ago. So the rim protection's not there. As a team, the one person that's really providing it is Ashlyn, and she's the one that makes opponents think twice about driving to the basket. And since she came back from the suspension, you could see her a little bit tentative, just trying to ease her way back in. And it was good to see her really take control of that situation where she'd gotten embarrassed on one end. She had her shot blocked. And as soon as she got the ball back, you could see it just by the way she started dribbling the ball that she was going to try to dunk. And South Carolina needs her to be that kind of forceful take charge player all season. She's too good. She's too talented to take a back seat, especially, with no Cardoso. She could maybe take a back seat last year because Cardoso would pick up the slack. but this year there's no one else doing that, and so it's really important that she goes out there and just plays with that kind of energy and fire.
Okay, talking to our Chris Wellbaum from Gamecock Central about the women's basketball team as they get set for Charleston Southern coming up tomorrow afternoon, and again, conference play coming up here in a couple weeks. We've talked plenty about Joyce Edwards. Obviously, a lot of hype coming into the season. She had her best scoring output of the entire season with 15 points against South Florida on Sunday. As we get in to this grind of conference play, how might her role change, and what's going to be expected of her when you're facing quality opponent after quality opponent?
Well, she reminds me a lot, not necessarily in style, but in what she's being asked to do. She reminds me a lot of Asia Wilson as a freshman, where if you think back, Asia started her first game, did not play well. After that, Dawn moved her to the bench, had her come off, and really sort of simplified what she was asked to do. Just come in, score some points, block some shots, grab a few rebounds. And that's similar to what they're asking Joyce to do right now. You know, they're not trying. She can do a little bit of everything. And early in the season, I think they were asking her to do a little bit of everything, and it kind of overwhelmed her. They've simplified that. It's come in, score some points. You know, she's got great post moves, great hands around the rim. You know, they can post her up, score some points. The most impressive thing about her 15 points the other day was that it never felt like 15 points. You look up and, oh, she's got another basket, another basket, another basket. And I think that's sort of what they will ask her to do for the rest of the season is come in, score some points, help that second unit play defense, get out and run, and just help whatever needs to be done. And I think her numbers are going to keep going up because that's how talented she is.
Well, big picture question for you. This South Carolina team, despite some jumping off the bandwagon after they lost one game, is still really, really good. They're certainly, I think you look across the women's basketball landscape, they're going to be one of the favorites to make it to the Final Four and have a great opportunity to win a championship. What are your observations from around the sport right now as to, you know, who are maybe another couple teams that could really challenge? And do you have maybe a dark horse maybe a team that nobody's really talking about who's quietly been really, really good and could ultimately be one of those championship contenders at season's end?
Yeah, as far as the favorites right now, it's sort of the usual suspects. It's UCLA, obviously, Notre Dame. Even despite the two losses, in their big games they've played really well. UConn's there. Southern Cal still got probably the most talented player in the country with Juju Watkins, and then Texas. Don't forget Texas. But if you're looking for a dark horse, maybe look to the Big 12, because I was looking at the net rankings today, and Kansas State's third. I don't know how, but they're third. So they're doing something right. They're a veteran team. I think it feels like every one of their players has been there for 6 years. So they know how to play their style. They have a dominant post. They have a dominant point guard. So they should be included on any list of dark horses.
Well, it's Wes, man. Can you talk? You mentioned Texas. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I'm already kind of looking ahead at this SEC schedule. And January 12th, South Carolina hosting Texas here in Columbia. Can you maybe just look ahead a little bit to what you've seen from the SEC in general and kind of just the teams that can match up with South Carolina this year as the league obviously continues to get bigger and deeper?
Yeah, Texas is obviously the big one. Texas can probably match up with anybody in the country right now. The elite point guard, strong post play, a really special player in Madison Booker. So they're on the short list of favorites to make the Final Four, and it's probably a 2-team race between South Carolina and Texas in the SEC. LSU's got a gaudy record, but hasn't really played anybody yet. But you know, they didn't play anybody last year or the year before, and it didn't hurt them. Oklahoma is good. I'm not. None of us were really sure what to expect from them coming into this year, but I think everything's looking good on their end with incorporating Reagan Beers into that system. Um, excuse me. It's those four at the top, and then there's a big gap towards the next level where you've got Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, teams like that. Kentucky has been very good, much better than I expected early. It's still the SEC is still very top heavy with it's just 4 teams instead of 2, and then a gap and 6, 7, 8 teams that are capable of winning any given night, but probably aren't threats to make the Final Four.
Again, he is Chris Wellbaum from Gamecock Central, covering all things women's basketball. Chris, appreciate your time as always, and we'll be checking in with you plenty as SEC play gets rolling here in a couple weeks.
All right, thanks for having me.
Women's team next up tomorrow against Charleston Southern. That game will be a noon tip, by the way. Pregame coverage will start right here at 11:30 tomorrow for that game at noon over at CLA. We're broadcasting live at Firehouse Subs, 542 Knox Sabbath Drive, going up until noon out here in Cayce. Come by and see us on your Wednesday here on the game. I've tried that. Mm-mm.
You must.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point and Gamecock Central takeover of Firehouse Subs, 542 Knox Abbott Drive here in Cayce, right across the street from Brooklyn Cayce High School. Tyler, West, and Chris hanging out, going up until noon. Come by and see us as we are sampling all the delicious subs that the great staff here has provided for us. We were debating. Everybody is confirmed the French dip is delicious.
Oh, it is outstanding.
Yeah. Well, what'd you just finish having?
I had the meatball with pepperoni.
Okay,
I think
good one.
That was number 3 of the day.
And you're telling me about the Miss Vicky's spicy dill pickle chips. I got to try these.
You can only get these very few places, and Firehouse Subs is one. This is what I've been told. Actually, Jeannie told me this.
Okay,
earlier.
that'll be in the next break then, because I love anything. Larry knows I love pickles,
Yes.
so I will have to try those and give my review on them coming up here in a little bit. But always excited to be out at Firehouse Subs, any of the Firehouse Subs locations, and been out here to one in Cayce a couple different times. Of course, the college football playoff first round games coming up this weekend, and when the host sites were announced for these, when it came to the respective seedings, everybody started talking about weather, right? Oh, weather in this place, weather in that place. As we've gotten closer, we can actually kind of confirm what the weather is going to be for these venues. And on Friday night in South Bend, Indiana, it's going to be around the high 20s, mostly sunshine, and then goes into the night, of course. In State College, Pennsylvania on Saturday, mid-20s as well. I don't believe there's any snow in the forecast. Texas, a balmy 60 degrees on Saturday for the mid-afternoon tilt with them in Clemson, out in Austin. And then the nightcap, Tennessee going up to Columbus, mid-20s there as well. So for those that think Southern teams cannot handle adverse conditions, they're going to face some adverse conditions this weekend in terms of the cold.
Sure. Yeah, that is chilly. I would. I am not. I don't like the cold.
What's your ideal football weather? Like if you're on College Football 25 and you can create your perfect football weather environment, what are you selecting?
60 to 70 degrees.
Okay.
Anywhere in there.
Sunshine, cloudy, wind.
No wind. A breeze is fine.
Yep.
A little sun's fine, but yeah, you don't need a lot. I'll tell you, when we went to Bama this year, it was only, I want to say it was like 80 degrees, but where we were seated for a good part of the game, we were in the upper deck in one of the end zones, and the sun was shining, and for some reason that made it way hot. Like it was only, quote unquote, only 80-something degrees, but we felt, we were up there like sweat, like sunburnt. They actually had at Bryant-Denny Stadium, they had dispensers of sunscreen,
Really?
which was a lifesaver because, we were getting destroyed out there by the sun. So a little less sun, a little cloudy.
Okay.
It's good, like kind of fallish kind of weather.
Sure.
That's my ideal, not 20 degrees.
Yeah, no. I'm more kind of sunny and 75, slight breeze kind of thing. I don't mind getting a little bit of a sunburn. I could use some color for anybody that's seen me. But none of those conditions seem to be on the table this weekend with the first round playoff games. Do you believe that for a team like Tennessee, for a team like SMU, that playing in the mid-20s is going to be a detriment to them?
I don't know. Are they used to it? No.
I'd say Tennessee's more used to it than SMU is.
Yeah.
It gets cold in the mountains in Tennessee.
Well, but you think about Tennessee, like they recruit from all over the place.
They
also.
do.
It's
Sure.
not like, they have some in-state guys, but they have guys. They've always recruited kind of nationally, so they got guys from California and in Ohio State, like guys that are on their roster now are more used to it, but they also recruit nationally, so guys kind of have a learning curve sometimes, if you want to call it that, when they get to Ohio State as well. I tend to think it's not as big of a factor as maybe some people make it out to be, but I don't want to say it's no factor.
Guys, all I know is that Tennessee was being made fun of for having heaters on the sideline in Athens when it's 55 degrees outside.
It's gonna be different.
So it may be a factor. I tend to think, though, those defensive guys, man, and Tennessee, believe it or not, the more evidence we've had, it's been that Tennessee was built on defense this year, even though I think we all thought they'd be a little bit more offensive based. And I think defense tends to travel. To answer your question earlier, though, I love a good snow game, Tyler. So
Okay. Now, do you like being in the snow game, or do you like watching snow games?
Watching at home with
With
The heater.
with a fireplace and your own
Yes,
bathroom and food.
absolutely.
Oh, I love watching the snow game.
Well,
to be
sure,
clear.
sure, but
Yeah.
we're talking about like being in the elements yourself. You're in the stands watching this thing. Well, what's your go-to?
Oh, that's got to be 60 degrees with a slight breeze and like give me
So I said,
perfect weather in the stands. But if I'm sitting at home and when we're talking about playoff time, I want snow game. I want crazy. Just give me madness on the field.
With this, especially this being the first iteration of a college football playoff with, the possibility of these kind of things happening, do you want weather to be that much of a factor in a game like this? There's no snow in the forecast this weekend. But let's say hypothetically it was going to suddenly snow in Happy Valley, and SMU's never had to play in that before, where Penn State has this huge advantage because of the snow. Do you want that from the standpoint of, hey, they earn the right for home field advantage and that benefits
Yes.
them, or do you want to just see a good game regardless of the conditions?
No, I like a good storyline. That adds to the story because then you have, hey, can SMU overcome that as well and put themselves in a position to go win? And I think what drives, other than just the game on the field, it is those fun storylines. So I'm all for a snow game or whatever else becomes a big factor. My biggest issue, though, I love the fact we're getting home college football playoff games, like on campus playoff games. Love it. Amazing. I wish they had one more round of home playoff games. However, I think that the in-game atmosphere should be handled by the home teams. And I think it should be even stronger than the regular season. Like they have those rules in the SEC about when you can play the music and when you can't. No holds barred. Make it the best home field advantage it's ever been.
You've earned the right to have the home field. You should be able to dictate what it's like. I completely agree with you. Get back into men's basketball coming up next, again live at Firehouse Subs in Cayce, going until noon here in the game. Calc Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris hanging out at Firehouse Subs here in Cayce. By the way, the sun just came out. We're just talking about weather there. Finally turning out to be a pretty decent day after a lot of fog and rain earlier on this morning. I have to say, Chris's recommendation of the spicy dill pickle Miss Vicky chips, phenomenal.
Can't get them many places, but you can get them at Firehouse Subs. So
listen, I love anything pickle related, and those are right up there. Those are pretty darn good.
Yes, and we have sampled a bunch of Firehouse Subs. We've had the new French dip sandwich. Man, it is super good. Great. If you're a French dip sandwich person, come out, check out Firehouse Subs' take on it. It's really good.
You know, one thing I love about Firehouse Subs, you'll see advertisements for fast food and stuff like that where the burger on TV looks nothing like the burger you get in the restaurant. Here, I mean, that picture does justice to what you actually get. Like, it is pretty darn close to what they hand to you when they make your sandwich.
Might be even better.
Might be even better. And you actually get to eat it instead of just look at a picture.
It's fantastic. So come see us. We'll be here till noon. Of course, they'll be open. They'll be rolling through dinner tonight, so you can come out and see us.
Oh, yeah.
Come see Josh. He's got some tickets as well.
Yep.
Wes is enjoying.
Wes is finishing up over there. We operate in shifts when we do these shows. So it's like, all right, two at the table, one eating. Two at the table, one eating. And that's how we work around here. But getting back into what happened last night over at Colonial Life Arena, a wildly entertaining basketball game. And I like to kind of take the fan hat off sometimes when it comes to some of these events and just say, man, if I wasn't rooting for either team, would I have enjoyed that game? And what we saw last night at CLA was just a purely entertaining basketball game, no matter which side you were for or against. Two heated rivals going toe-to-toe for 45 minutes instead of just 40.
It was a great game, great competitive game. I mean, both coaches talked about it afterwards. Lamont Paris, Brad Brownell from Clemson. Both teams walked away feeling like, hey, God, we probably didn't play our best in some ways. And South Carolina made just enough plays down the stretch. You could look at it and say, look, South Carolina at the end there, they're up 3, 7 seconds left or so. People are celebrating. It's kind of, hold on.
Wait a minute.
Chase Hunter, who had been, very quiet, 0 points for Clemson in the first half, really turned it on in the second half. And he got hot. He got to that point. Remember the Florida game last year that Carolina won, Tyler, where Walter Clayton made every 3 he took? And you just felt like he's going to pull up and he's probably going to make it. That's the feel that you got for Chase Hunter last night. He goes up the floor. You don't foul. Makes a running, banking 3-point shot, and you go, oh, man. And you kind of felt like, all right, is Clemson going to carry the momentum into overtime? Did South Carolina kind of shoot their shot, if you will? But they came out, won the opening possession, took a minute for somebody to score, and they ended up, getting it done. Clemson, by that point, had a couple bigs foul out. Colin Murray-Boyles was fantastic. There were just plays on all sides. Just a really entertaining game, and a shame that it was a little marred by the officiating again, but nonetheless, still a very entertaining game.
By the way, Chase Hunter, all of those points scored after halftime. So in the 25 minutes between the second half and overtime, all 27 of his points were scored. Just a phenomenal performance by him in the second half, but not quite enough to get Clemson over that hump. Let's go cut number 10 here, Ed. This is Coach Paris after the game last night talking about yet another wild contest against the team from the upstate.
Yeah, they were, all of them. I mean, just from a spectator standpoint, just watching, what a treat to see these games and how they unfold at the end. You got all kinds of drama. You got buzzer beaters, one that sends it into the overtime in this game. In year 1, Chico hits a buzzer beater to win the game. It's just the way it shakes out with these two teams when they match up. Exhausting is exactly right. It's amazing that you could say that after just all you're doing is coaching a game, but just it's just an emotional roller coaster. You're all over the place, and so it is a little exhausting when you're done.
And I'm a big believer in momentum. We've seen this countless times in football. The team that forces overtime a lot of times is the team that ends up winning the game because they have all the momentum on their side. When Hunter hits that shot to force overtime, he's not even on the ground when he puts the ball up there to tie things. I think a lot of people probably had here we go. Clemson's going to win the opening tip. They're going to go down and score, and they're going to end up running away with this team thing in the 5 minutes of overtime. For Carolina, who did not play a perfect game from beginning to end, played their best basketball when it counted in those 5 minutes of overtime and willed themselves to a win against a surging Clemson team that had really hit their stride at the end of regulation.
Yeah, this is a good Clemson team. You're not in a dogfight with a team that's just okay. I mean, the indications are Clemson's only played one ACC game, right? But they've beaten Kentucky.
Yep.
They just went to overtime with Memphis, lost a close one there. This has the look of a really, really good Clemson team. And, obviously with how it played out could have gone either way. I think both teams are kind of lamenting some things that kept this game close.
Sure.
Obviously, Clemson's lamenting things a little bit more because theirs ended up losing them the game. They had Ian Shefflin foul out. They had their other big man. I can't come up with his name. Lakin. He fouled out. He did not have a good game. Brad Brownell was very, he kind of tells it like it is. And he was very frank after the game. Like, he didn't play well. He's like, I don't know why, but he didn't play well. He got into some foul trouble. South Carolina's bigs got into some foul trouble. So that's one of the things that affected their game. And then you go to the free throws. At one point you look up late in that game, maybe even in overtime, South Carolina had missed, I think, 10 free throws when I looked at it.
Yep.
And Clemson had only missed one. And so, it was a game of runs. There was a point early in the game where South Carolina was up by, I think, 14. Clemson hit a shot and the foul and hit the free throw, and you went, all right, is that going to kind of spur a run for Clemson? And it did. So, game of runs. I think Clemson didn't get as good a performance for some of their key guys. Hunter being off in the first half, that hurt.
Who knows what he could have done?
That's right.
It could have been the 30s or 40s.
He could have been. He turned it on the second half, but him being off, Lakin being off in that game, those hurt. But for South Carolina, they had some things that helped and hurt. The foul trouble hurt them. The missed free throws hurt them, especially in some of the key situations late in the game. But Colin Murray-Boyle's phenomenal down the stretch, not only with being able to score one-on-one, get Clemson's bigs into some foul trouble, but how he distributed the ball from the post. Great passes. And Miles Studi was awesome. I mean, that was another thing Brownell talked about. He said, hey, we label Miles Studi as a shooter, but he has struggled shooting the basketball this year. Comes in this game, makes 5 threes, and that ends up being a huge difference.
And that's something, too, coming into this game that I was personally concerned about because Studi hadn't scored any points in the prior 2 contests, something he'd not done since his freshman year at Vanderbilt when he was, coming off the bench. So very, rarefied territory for him coming into this game. You kind of wonder where his head was going to be at. And you saw it very quickly. As soon as he knocked down that first 3, he was feeling it. And he had that confidence, went out there, had a great performance. 19 total points, 5 of 7 from beyond the arc. So looking like the Miles Studi that we know him, to certainly be. And, talking about the free throws, yes, that is an issue. And if you would have made a handful of those in regulation, you wouldn't go to overtime. But when it came down to it in overtime, 4 from beyond the line, Jamari Thomas making 2 key free throws right there at the very end that forced Clemson to have to shoot a 3 to try and tie the game there in the waning seconds as the overtime, clock ended up running out. So while it wasn't great overall, when you did need it to happen at the very, very end, you were able to make those.
Yeah, you made the plays when you had to. We saw some big shots from Studi. Yugasuk made some big shots.
Yugasuk took a big shot.
That was a strange play.
That was so weird, man.
Very, very weird play. I still don't really know.
Was that targeting? That 15-yard penalty and ejection?
Jim Beamer would probably throw a flag.
Beamer was there.
He was there. I know.
I've seen that.
Everybody was there, I feel like.
Don Staley's flag surfing.
Don Staley's having a big time.
Whole women's basketball team.
Whole football team. It seemed like.
Yeah.
BJ Mack was there, locked in.
BJ Mack was right behind Lamont Paris in the post-game celebration.
I consider BJ Mack to just be like an assistant coach at this point. He is right behind the bench every single game.
An honorary
coach.
Still member of the team. Yeah, but I mean, just a big win, right? Because, again, this is a Clemson team that looks like it's going to be a factor in the ACC. This is a quad 1 win. This is a team that I think was 19 in the net, right? Still are. Whether or not they fall out of the top 25, this is a quality win for you. And Lamont Paris said after the game, hey, we're going to I knew before this season, early in the season, we're going to judge this team by how they grow and how they progress. And I think with how this team's playing lately, you look at the wins, first of all, that they've been able to – they're stacking some wins now. They have won now against a quality opponent, which in some of their other opportunities earlier this season, they did not get that done. They're obviously going to have a very daunting slate when they start conference play because the SEC is really good. Jack and I were going over the numbers earlier. I think the SEC is something like 30-4 in the month of December.
It's probably the strongest it's ever been, which is saying something.
It's fantastic. My kids were asking me last night. They were like, what conference is Clemson and Carolina in basketball? They didn't understand. It's the same. And I'm like, historically the ACC has been the better basketball conference, but I'm like, the SEC has gotten really, really. I was trying to explain that to them, and it's been fantastic this year. So, point is, a daunting slate for them this year, but this team certainly looks to have gelled more and be playing better basketball right now than they were game 1, game 2.
Yeah, guys, I think to just kind of break through last night and to have so much that, like, it felt to me watching the game that South Carolina won and lost the game about 5 different times. It was like, oh, they're in control. Then, oh my gosh, did they just blow this? And then, well, I think they're back in control. And then, oh my gosh, you got Steph Curry out there for Clemson just, hitting threes from deep. And, man, that kid's talented, by the way. He had ice in his veins. But I think the just level of calm that you get from Lamont Paris, even when you're playing this just highly contested, tight rivalry game, great crowd, and Lamont's just as even keel as he could possibly be. And, I think that steadying force can go a long way. And I think if this team can make a run, we're going to look back on this game as being potentially a jumping off point for them. And here's the thing about the league this year, like y'all are talking about, it's the best it's ever been. So it is going to be a dogfight every single night in league play. However, if you can find a way to go 500 in the SEC, you're in the tournament. And I think getting that win last night pretty much puts you in that spot to where you weren't saying, oh, it has to be a miraculous run through SEC play in order to get into the tournament. You at least have done enough that if you have a solid sort of SEC schedule this year, then you are going to get in. And I think that was a very important thing just because of the metrics and how important the numbers are when it comes to basketball.
You can hear from Lamont Paris tomorrow night in Carolina Calls at 6 o'clock right here on the game, giving his thoughts on that win last night, as well as looking ahead to Radford coming up on Sunday. Carolina Calls with Coach Beamer tonight, special Citrus Bowl edition at 6 o'clock right here on the game as well. We'll talk a little bit of football with our guy, John Bryce from footballscoop.com. Coming up next, we are broadcasting live at Firehouse Subs in Cayce. Tyler West and Chris going until noon on your Wednesday here on the game.
All right, guys, excited to tell you about our friends, as always, over at Classic Roofing. Head on over to classicroofingsc.com or give them a phone call, 803-590-7870. Like we've been telling you, if you go to that website, there's a lot of different things you can click through and do. It could be as simple as going ahead at the upper right-hand corner, hitting that free estimate button, and letting them go ahead and come out and take a look at your roof and let you know if there are any issues, give you an estimate on if you want to go ahead and do a replacement. Big, small, indifferent, everything in the middle. They're going to take care of your roof for you. Also, very cool tool here on the website. Also, you can start to design what your roof may look like with this visualizer tool that's right there in the middle of the page. The GAF virtual design tool a very cool way to get an idea of what a roof might look like on your home without having to take that next step. So give them a call today. ClassicRoofingSC.com, 803-590-7870. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. It's our West Chris along with you out at Firehouse Subs here in Cayce going up until noon. Come by and see us. Got delicious subs, got tickets to give away, and plenty more. It is time to talk some football with the guy, John Bryce from footballscoop.com. Once again, John, first of all, appreciate your time as always. I want to pose you this question. Let's go back 365 days. What would have been more believable? Nick Saban walking away from coaching or Bill Belichick being a coach in college coming up in the 2025 season?
365 days ago, I have a hard time believing it in this day and age. So I'm stunned by that. I think that, as we discussed the last time I visited with you guys, that there was a lot of dysfunction at North Carolina in the search, and I still believe that. So we'll see how it translates. I believe that Bill Belichick has a mindset to bring some NFL people in to kind of do the actual coaching, and then to try and hire a handful of elite recruiters to supplement or fill out the Tar Heels roster. So that one's a wild one to me, though, guys. Like, of all the things that seem most unbelievable about college football. I think Bill Belichick coaching college football is the singular item.
John, are you with me that, and I think Wes and I were talking about this earlier too, like I could see that working, right? Because a lot of people well, Belichick's not going to want to deal with recruits and doing visits and things like that. But at the same time, as we become increasingly professionalized and with the transfer portal being pretty transactional, heck, recruiting in general just being more transactional, wouldn't somebody like Belichick, who has dealt with contract negotiations and evaluating players relative to their value, couldn't that actually work in his favor?
I think his knowledge of that system will certainly help. I can't get over the fact that in the NFL and the way that he built the Patriots into such a dynasty was that they, by and large, drafted really well and then got guaranteed cheap labor, relatively speaking, for 4 years at a time. There's no four-year guarantees anymore in college football. And then also, because it is so transactional, I still think the relationships are going to matter what. If everybody is offering similarly level money, then relationships can still be a differentiator. And I still think, take for example, young dudes are going to probably relate a little bit more to Shane Beamer than a Bill Belichick. Deion Sanders certainly has a unique approach, and he doesn't do a lot of the in-home visits and recruiting on the road the way that other head coaches have to do it. But Deion Sanders coached youth football and had connections all the way throughout, and had his son playing high school football that he coached for a while, and then just had different connections into the prep athletics world that I think helped him do the work that he's doing at Colorado. And so we'll see. My understanding is basically no expense will be spared for Bill Belichick. I was told by a college coach, his direct connections to North Carolina, that Michael Jordan has already pledged new funds for North Carolina's NIL since Belichick was hired. So that part is certainly interesting. And if Belichick can tap into Michael Jordan, then maybe they do get an extra bit of cachet in terms of being able to recruit out on the road and have a little bit more sizzle about them to get kids to North Carolina.
John, I know y'all are always tracking a lot of different movement in terms of coaches bouncing around there on Football Scoop. Take it wherever you want here, but what's maybe an intriguing situation that you're tracking right now in terms of just the potential for a big hire or a big move out there?
Well, I don't think that we're done at the major college level with significant changes at the coordinator position. And I think there's still going to be some changes in the SEC specifically. I'm not sure that we're done in the Big Ten. Obviously, Wake Forest this morning hiring Jake Dickert. I think most interesting about that is that James Madison almost lost his head coach for the second year in a row. Chesney was deeply involved in the Wake Forest search, and that one wasn't as quick as maybe what the perception is. It's my understanding Dave Clawson went to Wake Forest athletics director John Curry sometime early last week and just said, look, this is not working for me anymore. I can't stand this system. We don't have resources to compete. I'm going to step down. Here's what I'm thinking. And so Curry began really the process of finding Wake Forest's next head coach like 10 days ago, and not the 2 days ago that the Dave Clawson news broke out. But Wake Forest still has some very real funding issues. I know that there was the thought that Wake Forest, not the thought, I know that Wake Forest and specifically Dave Clawson was really frustrated by the fact that I think they've got a running back that's starting for one of the college football playoff teams, and they've got defensive backs that are maybe starting for some of the other college football playoff teams or some of the other teams that are going to the bowl, going postseason bowling, and Wake Forest has just finished off its second consecutive losing season under Dave Clawson, who's among the most successful head coaches ever in that program.
And talking to John Bryce from footballscoop.com, you mentioned that Jake Dickert hire, at Wake Forest, and it continues a trend that I've seen so far with this hiring cycle that I think is really interesting. You look at Bill Belichick going to North Carolina, look at guys like Scott Frost and Rich Rodriguez returning to schools they've coached at before, where, these Power 4 institutions are wanting to hire established head coaches, as opposed to in years past where we've seen a lot of coordinators getting these type of jobs. Is that something that you think could be a growing trend, or is this year just kind of an anomaly on that front?
I think this year has been a little bit of an anomaly in that regard. Central Florida very nearly hired Jamie Chadwell, and I don't know if Liberty offered more money, if Jamie got cold feet, or what happened, but that one was almost over. But, I mean, Chadwell's a proven coach. With Rich Rod going back to West Virginia, Jeff Monken was in on that one. Jeff Monken was in on the North Carolina job and had some strong backing for the North Carolina job, but I think some members of the Ivory Tower overruled and wanted to go get Bill Belichick. With Rich Rod back to West Virginia, it's my understanding that Rich Rod kind of brings his own group of NIL investors, so to speak. He's got some very wealthy friends that want to see him succeed. They're going to personally invest to help him have a chance to succeed at West Virginia. So I think it's more about unique circumstances. I think Terry Mohajer down at Central Florida, the AD there, conducted a pretty thorough search and talked to Barry Odom and some others, and then ended up going back to the Scott Frost tree after some other candidates didn't work out for various reasons. But I still think a year from now there will be some incredibly desirable coordinators at the top levels of college football, whether it's from the Oregon staff or some of these other guys that will have chances to get major college head coaching jobs.
Hey, John, we got about 2 minutes left in this segment. College football playoff coming up. What game are you most looking forward to this weekend? And maybe give us a couple thoughts if you can.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the Ohio State-Tennessee matchup. I still believe Ohio State is overall the most talented team in college football. I also think they've been among the most underwhelming teams in college football. So will it be the Ohio State team that ran Indiana out of the stadium, or will it be the Ohio State team that lost to a Michigan team that can't throw forward passes? So I'm very intrigued by that. And then Clemson is kind of playing with house money. I would say Texas, in my opinion, is probably the second most talented team behind the Ohio State Buckeyes in this. And then as we look, peeking just briefly ahead to the next round, what does Georgia look like without Carson Beck at quarterback? Because that seems to be what will be the reality for the Bulldogs.
Should be a fun weekend, those games starting on Friday night with Indiana and Notre Dame. John, appreciate your insight as always, and we'll check with you down the line.
Absolutely, and congrats to you boys on the scoop on Mike Shula as offensive coordinator. You guys are the best in the business on that South Carolina beat.
Absolutely. Appreciate it as always, John. He's John Bryce from footballscoop.com. We'll continue on live from Firehouse Subs out here in Cayce. A Gamecock football player with a distinguished honor served upon him yesterday. We'll hit that coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Wednesday here on the game.
Friends over at Integrated Media, integratedmediainc.com, or 803-948-8327. Go check out their showroom, the Experience Room, over on Snapdragon Court in Chapin. While you're there, you can actually walk directly across after you're looking at some awesome TVs and audiovisual setups. You can go check out Pro Swing. Same guys, Michael, Nathan, that entire team. They run Pro Swing. They're opening a new shop soon. New location of Pro Swing. Can't wait to go see that. So if you want to call them up and say, hey, I want a golf simulator in my house. Hey, need something as simple as a new television in my house. Security, cameras, Sonos wireless speakers, anything you need to upgrade your internet signal at your home so you can stream indoors, outdoors, man cave, patio. They can do it all for you. IntegratedMediaInc.com, or give them a call at 803-948-8327.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. We've been hanging out here at the Firehouse Subs in Cayce all morning long, giving away some tickets. Shout out to our guy Zach that came by a little bit earlier, rocking his Gamecock Central hat, by the way. Picked up some tickets to go see the men take on Alabama coming up here in a couple weeks. Speaking of tickets, real quick, have 2 pairs for tomorrow afternoon's game. It's a noon tip over at CLA between the women and Charleston Southern. Callers number 3 and 4 right now at 803-404-6100. Win yourself those pair of tickets to go see the women in action again tomorrow afternoon at noon over at Colonial Life Arena. As always, we are happy to be joined by our guy Larry Chandler, owner of all the Firehouse Subs here in the Columbia area. Thank you once again for allowing us to be at one of your stores. Good time as always.
Oh, definitely. Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all very much.
The French dip was phenomenal. I said the picture. It's pretty much what the picture suggests, and it was delicious. The au jus was amazing. Caramelized onions added that nice little bit of sweetness to it, so I highly recommend it to anyone.
Good. Well, it's an excellent sandwich for sure. So, especially with that au jus sauce.
I'm putting it in the top 5, Larry. the power rankings. It's officially in the top 5. So
it's my top 3.
I'm afraid to ask what got knocked out.
I don't know what got knocked out. I mean, brisket add bacon is still number 1, but this has moved into the top 5 easily. So
love it.
We'll just leave it at that. Yeah. Another win over Clemson last night, Larry. I know you had to be excited. Now South Carolina is beating them in men's basketball, women's basketball, football, obviously. A couple of draws in soccer.
Volleyball won as well.
Yeah, volleyball.
Yeah, volleyball. So
okay.
Yeah, it's 4-0-2. That's the
they haven't beaten
right
us
now
in anything. And I saw last night on that they've only won this thing one time. I think it was last year, Clemson. So we pretty much dominate all sports.
What we like to see.
Yeah, and I feel like when you're beating them in the more high-profile sports too, like let's just call it for what it is.
Yeah,
that's what fans love to be able to brag about, and to have it happen within a few weeks of each other. Two tight games, men's basketball and football. A couple of 3-point wins, a couple of just late game, where you're talking about the game is in the balance.
Yep.
Both sides are fighting it out. South Carolina makes the plays to win. What did you think last night, just to kind of put the cherry on top of this, at least this year when it comes to those sports?
Yeah, last night when Hunter banked that shot, of course, I was yelling him the foul the whole time down the court, and then he banked it, and I thought, oh, man, come on. And but, we held tight and made the plays in the overtime and won the game. It was one of the best basketball games I've seen in a while. It was a really highly competitive game. Both teams were going at it. So, very good. I think it's a great win to get us some really good momentum going into the conference here in a couple weeks or so. And football, by the way, I just have to say it was the first time I've ever seen us win in Clemson.
Nice.
And I was sitting there praying, like, are we really going to do this again? You're going to allow me to be here and get tortured losing another time at Clemson, and then the team just came through. So it was pretty exciting to actually see us win that game late. So,
well, this guy named Lenora Sellers is, you've seen a lot of ball over the years. He's just different.
Oh, 100%.
And I don't know what the vibe was like in the stadium, but I watched the game at home. I just had a weird feeling on that when Carolina got the stop after the field goal and got the ball back. Especially, I don't know if it was just seeing what the offense did against Missouri late in the game when they were just so calm with the game on the line. It felt to me like the offense in the fourth quarter just it's like, all right, they're going to lean on Lenoris, and he's going to find a way to win this game. What were you thinking as Carolina was kind of going down the field on that final drive?
Well, at halftime, somebody asked me what's going to take for us to win, and I said, well, we call him Superman, but I said Norris is going to have to take over, and that's pretty much what he did. And that last drive, once we made the field goal, then obviously we had to still stop them, and we stopped them. And then I thought, okay, we're in good shape. And of course, then we got backed up, and it's third and 16, and I'm thinking, okay, what's going to happen here? We need to cut it in half, and then maybe make it on fourth down. And I probably watched that replay, I don't know, 100 times. It still amazes me what's really impressive, what really is cool at the end where he spins the ball. And it was so cool. And then offensive line picked it up. I thought that ball would probably spin for a half hour. It was the coolest spin I think I've seen pro art college. It was like, it was moving. And then, but
it would still be spinning to this day.
Yeah, I think so.
Like it was
perpetual motion.
But it's quiet confidence. It's just like nothing rattles him. And it's pretty amazing to see.
And it's been so fun watching him, particularly the second half of the season. We went over his numbers after the Clemson game, and if you took what he did in the last 6 games of the year and doubled it, you're talking about the guy that's going to be on the stage for the Heisman Trophy next year. Like, it's just been a phenomenal process watching him grow, playing his best football right now. Still got one more game this season, obviously, but the hype for him going into next year is going to be absolutely through the roof.
Yeah, I think so, and I think this will be we're going to be, I think, even better on offense, and then of course defense. We gotta plug some holes, but I think it's pretty exciting. Looking forward to next year, and I think the bowl game is going to be pretty awesome to see. The majority, or pretty much all the players, going to play. They got some unfinished business, and they want to get to 10 wins, and kind of showed, I think, the playoff committee, hey, you should got us in, and so forth. So I'm pretty excited about the bowl game to see what we're going to do.
You're gonna go down to Orlando?
I'm doing the best I can. I got reservation tickets, so hopefully everything works out and things fall in place. But I went to every game this year except for the Kentucky game, so I gotta try to keep it going.
And it's neat that they're playing an Illinois team that very similar to South Carolina, going for a 10th win, which is something they don't do a whole lot. Right. It seems like nobody's really opting out in that game, so I think we're going to be treated as a pretty high-quality bowl game.
I think so. For sure. So, but exciting, great year, and great to see that. And of course, all our sports, our soccer, then volleyball, and then basketball teams are doing well. So exciting time to be a Carolina fan, right? For sure.
I want to go back to Lenoris real quick. Yeah. Does he remind you of anyone that has played at South Carolina in the past? And maybe not even from a skill set. I don't know, honestly, if there's been many that can do what he can do, but I've been most impressed with just the fact that he's even kill, even when the moment is big. But also, I feel like he's one of those rare competitors when the game is on the line. He takes it to a completely different level. He takes his play to a different level. Does anybody stand out to you?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know. I think Lenore's at the point where I've never seen anybody like him here. He does remind me body, but I think he's a lot faster than Cam Newton was when Cam was at Auburn. I think he's got a higher ceiling skill set wise, but his confidence level. I remember him hurting his ankle again in the LSU game. He was so upset that he's such a great competitor. I don't know. Anybody he remind you of? I mean, there's been a lot of competitive people, but
there's actually a little bit of Marcus Lattimore and kind of that confidence that he carries himself with.
Yeah.
You always just heard Lattimore was a leader, but in his own unique way. I remember, and it's not quite the same, but I remember when Marcus Lattimore being there when he committed, and you just had the feeling in that room. You were like, all right, something special just happened. Like Carolina just got a potentially generational type player. And I think just watching Sellers, and it's been a completely different, Marcus was recruited by everybody in the country, but just watching him go from being the guy that we all knew about here and have heard things about to he's a national name, just like that all of a sudden. There's just a quality about him. I feel like it's hard to put into the words the way he carries himself.
Yeah. Without a doubt. I mean, him as a person is amazing off the football field. He's just a fine young person and amazing. But, I was thinking quarterbacks when you asked me the question. But, I would think same thing, Marcus' personality off the field, on the field, just even keel, great representative for us. And he represents his family super well also. I also have to mention, I'll tell you what's an interesting person, too, is Dylan Stewart. What a super young man he is. And then I was talking to Clayton White the other day, and I said, he's amazing that he has a certain personality off the field, and then he is so violent on the field. And it's like, and he said the same thing. He said, it's just the strangest thing to see him around, and then he gets on football field. It's like a flipping a switch. He becomes a different person. So,
it's kind of guys you love to see.
100%. So, but Lenore's is special. So hopefully, we'll continue to build around him. And I think the next hopefully next couple of years will be super special with him. But I think we're going to attract some really good. I'm sure there's a lot of people want to come play because of him.
Last one for you here. Got about a minute.
Yeah.
Where does this season? I know we've still got one more game to go, obviously, but where does the season kind of rank all time for you in terms of enjoyment and what you've seen this year?
Yeah, it's been one of the top ones. I think the coming off the season we had last year, we did have some close games. We could have gone either way, but it's been special just to see them continue to get better and better. And we had such some quality players that are going to be playing on Sunday on this team. But we're always going to look back and say what could have or should have been. And we had teams. Reminds me somewhat back when Todd and Sterling Sharp were here. We had close games we lost. We had a great team, but we had games we look back on and said, hey man, we could have won that game and things could have been even different. But it is what it is. I mean, it's a special season. Even losing a couple games, I'm sure we feel like we should have won or could have won, definitely. So.
Yep. Definitely been a fun year for sure.
Yeah.
Getting one more game to go here coming up in a couple weeks. And Larry, as always, we appreciate you having us out at another one of your Firehouse locations.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad we got you some spicy
those are amazing.
Chips too.
I might be addicted to those now. I certainly appreciate that. He's Larry Chandler, owner of all the Firehouse subs here in the Columbia area. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, live from Firehouse in Cayce on your Wednesday here on the Game.
All right, if you're looking for a local, reliable HVAC company to help you with your heating and your air conditioning, maintenance, installation, repair, remember this name, Krantz Cooling. KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, Cooling with a K, Krantz. KrantzCooling.com. Since 1983, their team, their family-owned business, has been helping families and businesses around the Midlands with any of their HVAC needs. Go to their website at KrantzCooling.com. You can learn more about the Krantz Club. That's how you can receive regular maintenance at your home or at your business from the friendly, reliable team at Krantz Cooling and Heating. Again, they've been around since 1983. I know the guys. Shout out Justin Krantz, the general manager of Krantz Cooling and Heating. They can help you with any of your needs. Safety and real estate inspections, indoor air qualities, controls, thermostats, maintenance, installation, and repair. KrantzCooling.com or 803-672-3224, KrantzCooling.com.
And welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris wrapping things up at Firehouse Subs in Cayce. A couple more minutes to go here. Appreciate our guy Larry for allowing us to be out here once again today. Had some delicious subs. Tried these spicy dill pickle chips from Miss Vicky's that are absolutely amazing. Definitely going to have to be coming back for those. And, man, always just a fun time out here at these Firehouse Subs locations. I think this is third or fourth time we've been at this one. It's right, literally, it took me like 7 minutes to get here from the station. It's right down the street.
We're very fortunate. We get to come do a live Firehouse show every month.
We've
done a bunch of them.
Looking forward to January.
Already. Don't know where we'll be, but
counting down. We're going to be somewhere, and there's going to be Firehouse Subs, and I'm going to be happy about it.
That'll be outstanding.
Very excited. Very excited. Cannot wait. Appreciate Larry, as always, for allowing us to be out here. I wanted to wrap up with this. Didn't get a chance to touch on it a little bit earlier on, but Rocket Sanders was awarded the Associated Press's Comeback Player of the Year award alongside Tyler Shuck from Louisville, as well as Utah State defensive back Ike Larson. This season, of course, Rocket Sanders dealt with some injuries this year, got nicked up a little bit, but overall had a very, very strong season, was a very big part of why the South Carolina offense was so successful, particularly in the back half of the season, and somebody that we're going to remember fondly for his short time here at South Carolina.
Yeah, I think Gamecock fans were dreaming of having Rocket Sanders in the back. Like, he was one of those guys, like pre-portal guys, like, oh, man, if we could ever get that guy or a guy like that guy. And then it ends up coming to fruition, which is really cool. But, yeah, you got to be happy for Rocket. You know, he had that huge year that many Gamecock fans saw firsthand. You know, a 1,400-yard season out at Arkansas. 2023 did not go how anybody envisioned. I mean, he had at least a couple different injuries that we know about. The numbers were down, but he comes to South Carolina, fresh start, had obviously the prior relationship with Dow Loggins, with Loggins being on the Arkansas staff. And so it just made all the sense in the world. He was looking for a new spot. He was looking to kind of get back to form. And for South Carolina, they needed a big-time back. So it was a great fit. He also had, of course, the prior bond with Jamil Walker, who was his strength coach at Arkansas, now an assistant strength coach at South Carolina. And, you know, everything you heard when Rocket got to Columbia was that he just worked. The first order of business was to get healthy. And so he was able to do that. And, yeah, like you said, Tyler, even played through some things this year. You know, had the ankle injury, played through that, had to miss a little bit of time. But you saw some of the plays that he made down the stretch for the Gamecocks were just so big. So definitely going to be remembered fondly here.
It was pretty funny that this is one of the rare cases where a fan base like locks on the idea of a guy coming to play for them, and it just ended up just happening. It was like it was willed into existence.
Yes.
I remember when he entered the portal, hey, does Carolina have a shot here? And then we're kind of quickly hearing like, wow, this could happen.
Actually could happen.
But he's a good enough player. You're like, all right, who else is going to step in? It was almost surprisingly easy, I think, in terms of the fluidity in which it took place. But Rocket, I think, will always be remembered for the catch and run against Missouri. Like,
yes,
just the absolute I will not be denied aspect of that play for what it meant for this team, for what it meant for everybody in that stadium at that moment. Thinking Missouri was about to break your heart again, and just to go out there and make that play, that's why you go recruit a Rocket Sanders. And if you're a Rocket Sanders, that is why you pick a program like South Carolina that's on the up and up.
And I think it's one of those situations where both South Carolina and Rocket Sanders benefited both in the ways they needed to. You obviously wanted a established running back that could get your ground game going, which he was able to do even through battling the injuries. And on the other side of things, Rocket Sanders wanted to be able to prove that, hey, he wasn't damaged goods and is still good enough to play not only the SEC level, but play at the NFL level as well, which we're going to see him probably get drafted coming up here in a couple months. And obviously it ended up working out for both sides. And again, for a 1 year pairing, it's one that's going to be, I think, remembered pretty well.
Got a separate note on another 1 year Gamecock player.
Okay.
Who is going to be remembered fondly, and that's Kyle Kennard.
Yes.
Who obviously has, man, I knew he was going to get some postseason awards, but wow, he has really, really racked
Going to need a whole room for him.
He is. Kyle Kennard, and this is from our guy Kevin Miller at Gamecock Central. He's the 5th consensus All-American in South Carolina football history.
Wow.
Kyle Kennard is. So in order to do that, to be a consensus All-American, you've got to make 5 All-American teams, and you have to be first team according to at least 3 of them. That's the criteria. And the criteria, they don't change. They actually just, stick to them.
They're consistent.
So the AP, the FWAA, the AFCA, Sporting News, and Walter Camp, those are the 5 lists. So Kyle Kennard makes all 5 of those.
He was the number what guy in Carolina history?
5th consensus All-American in South Carolina history.
I know Clowney was one.
Clowney was one. I don't know the others.
It's probably a who's who of names.
George Rogers.
George Rogers,
Yeah,
I think,
probably.
was one. There was a couple, guys up in the stadium.
Sure.
If you go up there and look.
The jerseys retired,
Yeah.
statues, those kind of things.
But we all saw it play out in real time. You could sit there and watch the games. And Kyle Kennard's having a monster year, but man, it's cool to see him get honored in the postseason.
Yeah, well-deserved honor for both those guys, certainly. Can't wait to hopefully see both those guys here in the bowl game in a couple weeks down there in the Citrus Bowl in Orlando. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Again, thank you to our guy Larry Chandler for allowing us to be out here today. Halftime show with Terry Ford and Mike Shula's presser coming up at 1 next on your Wednesday here in the game.
All right, guys. We've told you about